The knock turned into pounding, then into a shoulder against the door. Samuel Goldberg had already called and texted Ellen again and again. No answer. He stood in the hallway outside their Manayunk apartment, listening for any sign of movement on the other side. When he tried the handle, it didn't give. The swing bar latch was engaged from inside. He called out her name. Silence. Goldberg went back to his phone, tried her again, then tried again. In the end, he forced the door. The latch snapped. He stepped into the apartment and moved toward the kitchen. Ellen Greenberg was on the floor. In the first seconds, his brain reached for anything that would make the scene ordinary, survivable. Then he saw the blood. He saw the knife protruding from her chest. He called 911. "Help! I need an ambulance now," he told the operator, saying he had just walked in and his fiancé was on the floor, with blood everywhere. As the operator asked questions and tried to guide him, Goldberg struggled with Ellen's clothing, telling the dispatcher her shirt was a zipper. Then, in a rush of disbelief, he said, "Oh my God! She stabbed herself," and described a 10-inch serrated kitchen knife lodged several inches into her chest. He added, "She fell on a knife. I don't know." The operator told him to wait for police. Those words, "stabbed herself," "fell on a knife, I don't know," would become part of the record. But the record also contained something harder to explain away: the condition of Ellen's body. Ellen was 27. She taught first grade in Philadelphia. She and Goldberg were engaged, living together in apartment 603. On January 26th, she left work early and went home. Philadelphia was in the grip of a heavy winter storm, the kind that empties streets and keeps people inside. Goldberg later told investigators he left Ellen in the apartment around 4:45 p.m. to go to the gym in their building. When he returned about half an hour later, he found the swing latch set and couldn't get in. Unable to gain entry, he tried to reach her by phone and text. He asked the building's doorman for help breaking the lock. The doorman told him it was against policy. Goldberg kept trying Ellen. Time passed in the hallway with no response, no footsteps, no voice through the door. At about 6:30 p.m., after forcing his way inside, he called 911. The apartment itself mattered. Investigators noted the door had been secured from within by the swing latch, a detail that can support a conclusion of self-inflicted death because it suggests no one left after an assault. Police also noted there were no clear signs of forced entry other than the damage caused when Goldberg broke the latch. In the first hours, the scene was treated as a suicide. Then the autopsy findings landed. The medical examiner documented 20 stab and incised wounds. They were not confined to a single accessible area. Later summaries of the autopsy described 8 wounds to the chest, a wound to the abdomen, an incised wound to the scalp, and 10 wounds to the back of the neck, ranging from superficial nicks to deeper injuries. The report also documented bruises on Ellen's body, 11 bruises described in later accounts, said to be in various stages of healing. Internally, the injuries were catastrophic. The autopsy described damage to major structures, including the aortic arch, the upper lobe of the left lung, and the liver. A wound path involved the cervical spinal cord region. The knife found protruding from Ellen's chest was documented as being embedded to significant depth. Based on those findings, the death was initially classified by the medical examiner as a homicide, but that classification did not hold. Weeks later, after further review and communication among officials, the manner of death was changed to suicide. That reversal, homicide to suicide, became the center of an argument that would stretch across years. Ellen's parents, Joshua and Sandy Greenberg, could not reconcile the official label with what they were reading. They obtained the autopsy report and photographs and sought outside expert review. They focused on the number of wounds, their locations, and the bruising. They questioned how a death with repeated stab wounds, including to the back of the neck, could be confidently called self-inflicted. The city's position, echoed in investigative summaries, leaned on the locked-from-inside latch and the absence of signs of an intruder. Police also cited a lack of defensive wounds, noted in their assessment of the scene, and the absence of incapacitating drugs reported in later litigation. To Ellen's family, those points didn't answer what the autopsy described. As the case moved into civil court, additional details entered the public record. In depositions, the pathologist who performed the autopsy described the case as unusual. He testified that after the autopsy, he believed he had enough information to rule the death a homicide, but that he was asked to list it as pending while police continued investigating. He also described seeking input about the spinal cord region, because if Ellen had been incapacitated early, that could have affected whether she could have inflicted subsequent wounds after being injured. The argument stayed, for the most part, in the language of procedure. What was documented, what was inferred, what was assumed. The family pointed to inconsistencies that emerged over time, including questions about the exact position of Ellen's body when found, based on statements made during the 9/11 call compared with some official descriptions. The official ruling remained in place. No one was ever charged in Ellen Greenberg's death. Samuel Goldberg has not been prosecuted. The case remained defined by the official classification and by the family's insistence that the classification was wrong. Years passed. The fight moved from the apartment to courtrooms and public records. The Greenbergs sought, at minimum, a change in the manner of death to homicide or undetermined, an outcome that could allow for renewed investigation. Media attention returned again and again to the same stubborn facts. A young teacher found dead in her own kitchen, a knife in her chest, and 20 documented wounds. In October of 2025, after years of controversy and legal pressure, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office issued a new review that again affirmed the suicide ruling. The office described the review as independent and based on the materials available, but Ellen's parents and their attorney publicly rejected the conclusion, arguing that key facts and expert interpretations were being minimized or ignored. The dispute did not end. It simply entered another phase, with the city standing by its classification and the family refusing to accept it. In the end, the most disturbing part of Ellen Greenberg's story is not that the record is empty. The record is full. Times, locks, photographs, measurements, wound paths, bruises, official signatures. What it cannot supply is a conclusion that everyone can live with. Ellen's death is officially closed as a suicide. To her parents, it remains an unresolved, violent death that the system labeled too quickly and defended for too long. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.